Hello everyone, Jeff here for Respawn Studios with a requested video, my top 25 games of all time. Now, I'm scrolling through some of the games I have on Xbox. You see I have 69 installed, 195 ready to install. um, I've played pretty much every major system: GameCube, PS2, PS3, PS4, the original Xbox 360, Xbox One, some PC games, some handheld games. I had the Wii. So this is a countdown of games from all of those systems, not just Xbox, which I primarily make videos for, and I'm going to be counting them down in descending order. So to begin, we are at number 25 with Dead Rising 4, which actually just came out 3 weeks ago. So I had a hard time putting this on the list already, but I actually have three games from 2016 on this list. Dead Rising, the series, is unique in that it is a comedy-centric zombie game. Here I'm wearing knight's armor, ridiculously jumping into a building. I stacked up different vehicles you could drive to make like stepping stone jumps to get up here. But anyway, the series used to have time limits where you had to choose which side quests and events to do, and it kind of felt limiting. But the last games in the series, Dead Rising 3, Dead Rising 2 off the record, now Dead Rising 4, haven't had time limits. So you could choose what to do on your own pace at the own time, go after collectibles, just make combo weapons and vehicles. It's just a lot of fun. All right, moving on to number 24, Firewatch, another 2016 game. It came out in February on PlayStation 4, and it came out for Xbox One, I believe, in September. You play as a park ranger whose job is to look for fires or for people doing bad things in the park, like staying late. So it sounds like it's a kind of boring setup, but it's absolutely not. The first 15 minutes of the game are quite unique and really hit you. There's a very powerful emotional core to the game, even though it's kind of cartoony graphics and there's a fair amount of humor. It's actually a very serious game. There's a deep mystery at the heart of the game. You see a missing persons poster here coming up the top right of this box. The entire game will only take you about 3.5 to 4 hours to beat, but it's a very great experience, and it's an indie game, so it only costs $20. I would very much recommend Firewatch. It skips around from certain days that are central to the main event at the in the plot of the story, so you don't have to waste time doing stuff over random days, but it really is a powerful experience, and I would recommend it for everyone. Moving on to number 23, we have Bioshock Infinite. Bioshock Infinite is the third game in the Bioshock series. The first two took place in the underwater utopia called Rapture. This third game takes you back in time to, I think, 1918, I want to say. Could be completely wrong, but it's the early 20th century, and instead of being underwater, you are in the sky for a utopia called Columbia. You play a private investigator who is tasked with finding a woman named Elizabeth. You can use guns for combat, but there's also, just like the first two games, plasmids. They're called tonics in this game, but they're largely the same kind of abilities. There's some unique ones like Murder of Crows, but it's a great game with a very powerful story. The opening and ending of the game are very unforgettable and graphically quite amazing. This isn't even like a remastered version. These are the original graphics, and it still looks amazing. The game isn't all that old, though, either. Okay, moving on to our next game here. We have Metro Last Light at number 22. The Metro games, Metro 2033 was the first one. Metro Last Light is the sequel. They're both based on actual Russian novels about a future where the surface has been devastated by nuclear bombs, so people are forced to live underground in subway systems, and you have to wear gas masks to go to the surface. There's also these kind of creatures up there. So it's about survival. It's about trying to live on. There's some really good combat. There's some really good stealth sequences. There's achievements in the games to beat it without killing anything, which is great. And there's some very interesting flashback sequences and just a lot of unique instances in the game that you would not find in most games. I would highly recommend both Metro games, and they're often very cheap. I've seen them on sale for $6. There's a remastered bundle of the two of them together for just a few dollars. Normally, I think it's just like 20 though, so definitely get the Metro games if you're into first-person games or survival-based games. Okay, moving on to number 21, we have an indie game on PS4, The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. The graphics are stupidly good. You play a detective looking into the disappearance of this boy. Now, you see the words floating on the screen. This is like how your mind works. You're trying to piece together these different instances, these murder scenes, or you're trying to imagine what actually happened. So you find clues and then you visualize and piece together in order what happened to find out the truth of the mystery. So as an indie game, again, it's cheap. I think it's also $20. It's only a few hours long, but again, it's a great experience. A very cool mystery story with a twist ending that is very good. I usually hate twist endings, but it's so well done in this game. This is early on in the game. This is like the first major case you run into, but there's 6 or 7 like this. And it begs for replayability because you might have missed some things, but also at the end of the game, you can access a map and go back and do things before you end the game, which is a nice little feature so you don't have to restart to do something. All right, moving on, we have the opening of Dead Space 2 here, one of the most horrifying games ever. This is our number 20 game. So you play as Ethan, the engineer from the first game, but this is now you trying to survive with these crazy necromorphs yet again. And I'm just laughing because this is so messed up, right? I've watched this like 200 times. I've played this game so often for achievements and just because it's enjoyable to play, but that scene still gets me. So it is a horror game, it is scary, but it's also just enjoyable. The graphics are still great, even though this game is, I think, 9 years old or something now. Well, maybe not 9 years old, but at least 5 or 6 years old. And the combat is largely the same. It's a third-person action game. You could use guns. You have to cut off the limbs of the necromorphs to stay alive. There's some like space floating sequences. The sound design in pretty much every great horror game has to be good to keep you on your toes, and it is quite good in this game. Dead Space is just all about survival, finding enough materials, conserving ammo. Now, moving on to our next game, we have Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. This is number 19 on my list. It's another PS4 indie game. It's a unique setup in that there aren't any other people. You wake up at the edge of this town in England, and you're trying to find out where everyone went. What the heck happened? Why are you the only person? So I'm walking in and out of the doctor's office here because this is an achievement guide I made. There's an achievement to enter the doctor's office 10 times, so I just go back and forth here. You see this floating yellow light? It's kind of a cool guide. You don't have to follow it, but it can take you to the next kind of story element if you're ever lost. It's a powerful emotional story, and you can experience it on your own time. You can pretty much go anywhere at your own pace. It'll, again, only take you a few hours, but it's another indie game, cheap, and I would very much recommend it. Okay, moving on to our number 18 game here. We have Destiny. I was actually not excited for Destiny at all leading into it, even though I'm a big Halo fan. When Bungie moved on to Destiny, it just didn't sound like something for me. Kind of an FPS MMO. I'm not really into MMOs. But I've logged over 114 days of playtime in it. I've played it almost every day. I love it. This is one of the unique holiday things they do, Sparrow Racing League. There are raids, there are strikes, which are little instances you do with 3 people taking down a boss that are about 20 minutes long. There's a main story. There's new bounties to do each day. They have seasonal events, different multiplayer playlists. There's just a lot of content and a lot of things to do co-op with friends. It's just a blast to play. The production values are outstanding. All right, moving on, we have Layers of Fear, the highest ranking game that came out this year. Layers of Fear was in early access on PC and Xbox One, but the full game came out in February of this year. It's a horror game. You play as someone walking around this house, finding out the story of a painter and his family and what's going on. The painting will shift throughout the game as you find more and more evidence of the terrifying reality, and I'm going to leave it there. It's very, very, very scary. It's another indie game. It's also cheap, $20 or less, so I would highly recommend it. It also has a DLC, which is quite good, which just came out in August. And it follows the daughter of the family coming back and trying to make peace with what happened. It's just unforgettable. I love horror games, and some of them are just like jump scares. Layers of Fear scares you in like every conceivable way. All right, moving on. We have Psychonauts, a game that was on PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. Psychonauts is made by Double Fine, the people that made Full Throttle and Day of the Tentacle, a lot of classic PC games. And, well, Tim Schafer, the guy that did a lot of those. But you play what's called a Psychonaut. These students that are at a summer camp to be trained to enter people's minds and help them get rid of their mental baggage, which are literally like suitcases in the game, figments of their imagination, which are these little like glowing things you could pick up. But it actually gets much darker from there. A lot of people remember I Am the Milkman, My Milk is Delicious, or The Milk is Delicious. You go in the heads of different mental patients and you're trying to help them, but it could lead to some very scary outcomes, and it does. But it's a very unique game. Again, the levels are inside of people's heads, so something that you don't experience every day. All right, moving on to one of the best known and most loved games of all time. This is the remastered. No, this isn't even the remastered version. This is the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The remastered version just came out last month in November of 2016. But this is me recording the original Xbox 360 version. It actually looks even better than this now. And if you played it on PC, you probably already had mods that made it look way better. It is an open world RPG. You can choose all kinds of different classes, all kinds of different approaches. There are optional factions to join, like the Thieves Guild, the Dark Brotherhood, which are assassins. You get to fight dragons. You get to ride dragons. There's a lot of DLCs that take you to some cool areas from the previous games. And it's just beautiful to look at, as I'm showing here. Waterfalls, great looking trees, unique caves with some fascinating creatures of all kinds. There's so much to do. There's a lot of side quests. The main story could probably be beaten in about 15 hours, but there's well over 200 hours of things to do in the game. So here I'm just scanning around showing you. It looks great. And again, this is the original Xbox 360 version from several years ago, but a fully remastered one just came out. And you even have the option to use mods to make it look even better and to get even more quests or different fun things. You could like turn enemies into Thomas the Tank Engine and ridiculous stuff too if you're into that. All right, this is something unique. I'm showing Silent Hill Downpour because unfortunately I have no way to capture Silent Hill 3, which is actually my number 14 game on this list. So ignore Silent Hill Downpour. It is a Silent Hill game being played in the background, but Silent Hill 3 is what is number 14. You play as Heather, the daughter of the main character from the first game, Harry Mason, and you are pulled back to Silent Hill. The game starts with a nightmare of an amusement park, and you're going to actually wind up at that amusement park later in the game. The soundtrack is unbelievable. I still play several of the songs on my iTunes almost every day. I use one of the songs when I teach. It's a very scary game. It's a lot of psychological elements, as Silent Hill is. You literally face your demons, and it's great. The graphics still kind of hold up, even though it's a really old PS2 game. The sound design, the level design, the creature design, the psychological plot, it just is great. All right, moving on. This is just a screenshot. Again, I don't have a way to capture a game, and I don't want to use someone else's gameplay, so just here's a random screenshot of Zelda Majora's Mask. That was Ocarina of Time. We're actually going to get to Majora's Mask in a bit. I don't really think I could say anything new about Zelda, so that's why I just wanted to use that quick screenshot. Okay, moving on to our next game. This is Fallout 3 at number 12. You start being born and you pick a gender. It's another open world RPG made by Bethesda. It's kind of the same as Metro in that nuclear warfare has devastated the surface and people were living underground, but now you're coming back to the surface and trying to move forward. There's a lot of unforgettable side missions and DLCs. There's, again, just like Skyrim, tons of content to do. The main story could be beaten in about 12 to 15 hours, but the side quests and DLCs are what really make that game. All right, moving on to number 11, Outlast. I cannot wait for Outlast 2 coming out in a few months, probably. But here is the original Outlast. You play an investigative journalist, and you got an email from a whistleblower that there are horrible things happening at a mental institution. Kind of a classic horror movie setup. The unique thing about this is it's like the old Fatal Frame series. You can't use anything to fight. It's called Outlast because you're just a guy with a camera. So you see I'm limping, you're hurt. You have to run and hide. There's nothing you could really do. So it's terrifying constantly. Your camera can break, you could lose it, you might not have night vision. There are some very messed up enemies. The DLC Whistleblower gives probably the most messed up sequence I've ever encountered in a video game. But it's great. The whole game will again take you only about 2 to 3 hours, and the DLC is about an hour, hour and a half. But I cannot recommend it more. It's yet another indie game, so it'll only be $20, or I think $25 if you bundle the game and the DLC. And if you're into scary games, you can't really do better than Outlast, in my opinion. It's fantastic. The graphics are incredible. And again, Outlast 2 is coming out soon, and there's even a demo up on Xbox One. I'm not sure if it's on PS4. I imagine it is, but there's a demo available for that. All right, moving on to our top 10. This is Gone Home. I know it has the reputation of being in the infamous walking simulator category, where you just walk around and experience a story, but I love that. It's nothing like another game you've played. You are a daughter, one of 2 daughters of a family, and you return home, but no one's there. So you're trying to find out, where did your parents and your sister go? So by interacting with objects, you hear these audio diaries of your sister about what's been happening, and it's so powerful. The emotional story is going to hit you over and over. Yeah, the entire game could be beaten in 90 minutes, even if you look through things. But that doesn't matter. It's about the experience. It's about this journey. It's about hearing about these people. It feels real because it's like real life. It's just fantastic. It's just an exploration game. Again, you're walking around, interacting with objects. You can look at magazines, letters. You're looking at emails, hearing voicemails. You're experiencing what you missed while you're away on vacation. And now you've come back and you're finding out what's been going on with your family, and it will probably make you cry. It's so good. All right, moving on to number 9. This is a Xbox 360 game, LA Noire. It is about a detective who had recently returned home from World War II, and you start in the traffic division of the Los Angeles Police Department. You solve a few cases in each one, and you get to move up. You go to Vice, you go to Homicide. Even though, again, it's an older game, the graphics, like most of the games on this list, still hold up. It's one of the first games to use actual actors as the characters, and the voices and the lip syncing is perfect. It's the first game to actually like nail it, because again they fully capture the actual actors, and it's great. Here I'm showing you an optional collectible. You pick up classic films of like kind of the noir genre, which is really cool. But the main case is you do a lot of interrogations, and you have to decide whether people are telling the truth or lying. And you could horribly bundle a case. You could like choose the wrong person. You can get it wrong, which I also really like. It's not like you're a perfect detective. You just go around shooting people. No, you interrogate people, you arrest people. There are some big chases and things like that, but it's actually a more grounded kind of detective game. All right, moving on to number 8. This is Life is Strange. I've already talked about the impact of some emotional stories like Firewatch, like Gone Home. Life is Strange hit me like no other game I've played. It was an episodic game. The episodes came out about 6 to 8 weeks apart, and people went nuts on the internet, including me and my friend across the street, Joseph. We would play the game together, make the choices, and then, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Where's it going to go? It starts as a kind of normal seeming story. You're a teenager at Blackwell Academy, which is a art-centric high school. But you run into your old friend who is here with the blue hair, Chloe, and she's shot. And you reach out your arm like, oh my God, and you reverse time and you're back in class. And that is one of the huge things in the game. You can manipulate time. You can go back and try and change things. And like a lot of time travel stories, you start to wonder, am I actually doing the right thing? Am I making things worse? So it's a lot of impactful decisions you have to make that are going to have consequences that influence the story, who lives and who dies. One of the most powerful moments in the history of video games is the end of the second chapter of this game. There are 5 chapters, but the end of 2. If you aren't already having this game in your top 10 of all time after finishing episode 2, then the series probably isn't for you. But I would bet at least 90% of people that play this game and get to the end of the second chapter are going to finish it and will absolutely love this game. A lot of the achievements and trophies are for taking optional pictures. You can pull up your camera and take photographs. You could look at your phone, look at text messages. You could read your journal. So it's also another kind of grounded story, and the people feel very real, and you feel invested in having them succeed or fail or wanting to hurt the bullies, things like that. It's a lot of kind of our own high school experiences, but in a cool sci-fi setting with the time travel. You have all of these different choices to make within dialogue, and then there's these like huge decisions where you have to choose one or the other. And I like sat my controller down and would think like, oh my God, for like 5 minutes before I made a decision, because none of them are really easy. So here's an example of the journal. You could look at photographs. You could look at places that you've been. You could look at text messages. There's text messages from a dog too, which is great. All right, moving on, we have Dark Cloud. It was a place. This is number 7, by the way. Dark Cloud was a PlayStation 2 game that you can play on PS4. You could buy the game. I think it's also $20, like a lot of the games on this list, and still be able to play it. This is what it looks like right now. So yeah, it's dated, but it still actually looks pretty darn good. You play as this young boy in kind of a fairy tale. The world has started to fall apart. So you go into these like 12 to 20 floor dungeons, and you have to get materia. You have this special crystal, and you're able to rebuild towns. You choose which buildings to put where. You could build the roads, build different things. You could talk to people, and they'll tell you, oh no, I'd rather be next to this person. I don't want to be near them. I want to see the sunset. So it's really cool. You get to rebuild the world the way you want. You can choose to listen to the people or not. The combat's really good. yeah, just play Dark Cloud. All right, here's another quick screenshot. Again, I wasn't able to capture. This is clearly Zelda Majora's Mask, a very awesome. I didn't make this. This is a brilliant person online that I found on the gaming subreddit. Majora's Mask is another 64 Legend of Zelda game. This is my number 6 game of all time. It's a third-person action game. But again, if you don't know Zelda, it's probably... No, it's not already too late. Get either a DS or Wii and play the hell out of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. They are unforgettable. The music, the story, just everything about it. It's so creative. All right, moving on to our top 5 now. This is the first Bioshock. This is also the final boss battle, so spoilers. But again, if you were watching this, you probably could expect spoilers in an all-time countdown list. This game has been out for a long time. This is the remaster. A collection just came out for $60 of Bioshock 1, Bioshock 2, and Bioshock Infinite for $60 altogether. And I would highly recommend that. Even if you've played the series like me, it's great to play them again, and it comes with all of the DLC. The unique thing about Bioshock is, of course, the setting, the underground utopia of Rapture. You see it as it's kind of started to fall apart, and people have abused Adam. Adam is something that you can use to change your appearance, to give you abilities, to make you prettier, smarter, whatever it is. And people went overboard, and it started to affect them. It made them into, like, horrible creatures more than people. So you are stumbling upon Rapture once it's in that stage, and you're trying to make sense of it all and maybe try and save some people. The big daddies and little sisters are the iconic enemies. You could use these plasmids, which I'm switching through here: Winter Blast, Incinerate. There's telekinesis. You could turn security bots onto your side with certain ones. It's very cool. You could use guns, you could use melee weapons, you could just use plasmids, you could choose to do the game a lot of different ways. And it's just amazing. Okay, moving on, we have Resident Evil 5. I know, a lot of people hate the more action-oriented Resident Evils. I don't. I love them. I think all of the Resident Evil games have been pretty darn good. 5 is definitely the best one in my opinion. This is the first DLC that came out called Lost in Nightmares, where you return to the mansion from the first game. And it is a lot more classic like them. There's only a few enemies. It's much more about survival. You don't have much ammo. And you're exploring the mansion trying to get out, find out the mystery. You play as Chris and Jill. In the main game, you play as Chris and Sheva. You can get all kinds of ridiculous costumes in Resident Evil lore. Of course, it doesn't make sense, but you could wear like clubbing outfits. You could wear a zebra suit. The action gameplay is great. There's all kinds of different collectibles that beg for replayability. There's a lot of different guns. You can unlock unlimited ammo once you have beaten the game once. There's all kinds of different difficulties that give you some challenge. Like on veteran and professional, you can only be hit once and you're dead. So you really have to be careful and get pretty skilled at the game to be able to advance. But again, this is the DLC. It's kind of more classic if you're into that. There are 2 DLCs, Lost in Nightmares, this one, and then also Desperate Escape, where you play as Josh, who's a character you encounter in the main game, and Sheva, in a kind of side story. There are, I believe, 5 or 6 chapters in the game with multiple sub-chapters within them. You could go back and replay individual parts to collect emblems, to go for score, to get any treasures you might have missed, or just to have fun. I have played this game for over, I would say 300 hours combined between the 360 and Xbox One version. There are also kind of multiplayer things that are called mercenaries or versus mode. I don't like them at all. But this is still my number 4 game of all time because it's just a blast to play. Yeah, it's not exactly a horror game, but I don't care. It's a fun game, and that's what matters. That's why this is so high up on my list. Here I'm interacting. You could exchange items, so inventory management is still a pretty big thing. All right, moving on to number 3. We have Borderlands 2. Wow. This is one of the more popular games. Tons of people cosplay Borderlands, so I don't know if I could really say anything that you don't already know. See, my badass rank is 15,755. I've played the hell out of Borderlands on both 360 and Xbox One. On Xbox One, you can get what's called the Handsome Collection, which is 2 games in one. It's Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel. Both of them are great. Borderlands 2, of course, though, is the classic one. There are also, I think, 5 DLCs for it, and all of them are great. What sets Borderlands apart, of course, are the cel-shaded graphics. It's very unique and looks great. Also, the humor. Characters such as Handsome Jack, Tiny Tina, Torque, Mr. Torg, the gun manufacturer. They're so funny. This is one of the achievements. Shoot this guy in the face. He's saying, shoot me in the face. And what do? You shoot him in the face. So there's all kinds of ridiculous elements to the game like that. It's just a fun game. You see, it's a first-person shooter. You get all kinds of powerful weapons, but it's more about just having fun. And the storyline and the dialogue, the humor, it's all about just enjoying the experience and the journey. Okay, moving on to number 2 here in a second, we are going to get to Alan Wake. Alan Wake was a game on Xbox 360, was an exclusive to that system. I'm already talking about it now. I know I still have some Borderlands stuff playing, but Alan Wake, you can also play it now backwards compatible on Xbox One. It's one of the over 300 games you could do backwards compatible. It has another couple DLCs that are fantastic, but if you only play the main game, great. That's awesome too. You play a novelist who's written some books about I think it's a detective, and you are now kind of suffering from writer's block. So your wife and your agent kind of put this vacation together for you to kind of break you out of that rut. But what you don't know is you go into this town that has this sort of kind of Twin Peaks crazy twist to it, where words that are written in this one cabin come to life. And you're being kind of manipulated, and you don't know that at first. So this is when you first arrive. You're going to the diner. It is a horror game. It is very much a mystery game, but there's some very funny things. Like, here's a cardboard cutout of you, and your agent comes to get you out of prison in a little bit, and he starts carrying around the cardboard cutout everywhere because he's all about promoting you as the famous author. So there are a lot of scary things. There are a lot of mystery things about the origin of the town, the words, where it comes from, what happened when you blacked out, where is your wife, because she goes missing very early on in the game. But yeah, the combat is great. It's a third-person action horror game. It's very much mysterious. There are some fun collectibles. There are some great DLCs. There are some licensed songs that are used very well in the game. It's made by Remedy, the people that made Max Payne, and I would very much recommend Alan Wake to anyone that has access to it on 360 or Xbox One. All right, and we've reached the end. This is my number 1 game of all time, Until Dawn. It was originally shown as a PlayStation 3 game, but they kept delaying it because they knew PlayStation 4 was going to come out soon. It's a classic horror movie setup. It's 8 friends on a little getaway to a cabin in the woods on a mountain. And you decide via your choices who lives and who dies. There's a killer on the loose. There's all kinds of different things that you don't know what's happening. But why is this my number 1 game? Oh gosh, let's go, right? It uses real actors. You might have just seen the guy I'm playing as was talking to Rami Malek, the guy who's the lead in Mr. Robot, one of the best known shows on TV. Hayden Panettiere is one of the main characters. The main guy, Mike, is from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Of course, they don't play those people, but their faces, the whole body, was them scanned into the game, which is very cool. But as you go through the game, you collect these different mysteries for different things. The opening sequence of the game, the prologue, shows 2 different sisters that unfortunately fall to their death. And this is 1 year later. The friends are coming back to the cabin, and they're trying to get through it together, but of course, things go horribly wrong. So it's called Until Dawn because, as I mentioned, your decisions will decide who lives and who dies. And That's crazy, right? The butterfly effects are something that comes up throughout the game. You could see, did you allow an animal to get away? Did you throw a snowball at your girlfriend? Did this happen? Did you say this to someone? All of those things can impact who lives and who dies. It's nuts. This begs replayability, and I've replayed the game a lot. I have every trophy in this. I can't stop playing it. I love it. You see, the graphics are absolutely insane. This came out in August of 2015, and it was the reason I bought a PlayStation 4, and I was not disappointed. I had such high expectations, and it even surpassed them. There are, I believe, 10 chapters or 11 chapters in the game. The whole game will probably take you anywhere from 6 to 10 hours to beat, and then again, you're probably going to want to replay it. The first time I played it, 3 people died, and I worked trying to get everyone to survive. I tried to find out what would happen if everyone died, and it's great. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Just look at it. The graphics are crazy. If you like horror games, this is kind of known as a couples game because people often play it with their friend or with their significant other because you make the choices together. It feels like an interactive movie by what you choose to say to someone, what you choose to do, how you choose to act in situations. It very much influences the story, which is something that is in a lot of games now, like the Mass Effect games, the Fallout games, things like that. But it's so much on a bigger level to me in this game. Everything about this is, to me, perfect. The collectibles kind of make sense. They're related to the mysteries in the game and the folklore. You find these totems that give you hints of what might happen if you make choices. They show how someone might be saved, how they might die, how things could happen. It's so cool. It's so much fun to play. It looks great. The sound is great. It's cool to have real actors in the game, professional actors. It's written like, it plays like, it looks like an actual movie. So it's very unique in that way. And as I've said probably 1,000 times in this video, you're probably sick of it. It's just fun. Yeah, it's a horror game. Yeah, it's scary, but it's just enjoyable though, because you have control over what happens to these people, and you kind of want to know what is the core mystery. There's 2 big twists in the game. I'm not going to spoil them, but I would recommend buying a system just like I did, just to play Until Dawn. It's that good. Okay, so we've made it through about 40 minutes, my top 25 games of all time. I hope you enjoyed. Of course, you're probably going to disagree. You probably have Red Dead Redemption. You probably have Mass Effect 2. I understand that. You probably have The Witcher 3. But these are my favorite 25 games. So thank you if you've watched this whole video. This is Jeff from Respawn Studios, and I'll be back with more videos soon.